Indeed, Belgium is a water-scarce country. Flanders is even more water-scarce than the whole of Belgium. But if you see on this graph where Belgium is located, I remember when 6 years ago I moved from the chemical industry to the water utility. And actually I was working for an international fertilizer company, Yara International, where at a certain moment I was working on an innovation platform around water scarcity, because we saw that we needed to innovate some of the offerings to farmers to be prepared for a more water scarce or a different way of irrigated or non-irrigated agriculture. So I was really convinced about the water scarcity, and I had seen these type of graphs. But when taking the lead of actually Belgium's largest water utility company, and I was talking about water scarcity, they said, oh, Hans, you come from an international company. In Belgium, we don't have water scarcity. So there was no awareness because people always had the feeling that it's raining. And still now, people think that when it's raining for 15 minutes a day, that it's always raining. So it isn't. But actually, we see that although there is not the awareness within the public opinion that Belgium is water scarce, we must say that our governments have in the past taken some decisions which has led to a more water efficiency, a more water efficient use, a more reduced water usage. If you see the households here, you see that let's say 34% of all water use is going to the households, but you see that the households, all what households are using, is not all about tap water. It's only 88, even 87% that is gradually decreasing. And how comes? If we see the water use in Flanders, and these are the numbers of the study of 22, so that is quite recent. In Flanders, every person is at average utilizing 102 liters of water per person per day. But that is not tap water. There are a lot of countries, like the Netherlands, if I remember well, you are at 130, 135, 140. This is 102 liters of water. If we turn it into, and how much of tap water is that? That is about 90 liters per person per day. And I can say the area we serve, which is 55% of Flanders, there the water consumption is even lower, is exactly 84 liters per person per day of tap water. How comes? Because the amount of rainwater which is used is increasing, and I explain you how that comes. And there is also a small amount of groundwater per private wells that people have been using, but this is decreasing. And why is it decreasing? Because the availability of water in these pits is less and less guaranteed. You see that where the use of water is going to. That's important also to realize that actually, yes, we all use a certain amount of water, but actually only 16% is what we would call for primary use for drinking water application. And that is for food and beverage and preparing food and even doing the dishes to avoid any contamination in everything which is in contact with food. But that is only 16%. 37% is about the personal hygiene, a shower, a bath, the tub, and so on. And 47% is what we would call secondary water use. And you see it's about the toilet flushing. Yeah, we adapted the presentation because it's in the Dutch house, so the tulips need to be irrigated. But you see that is a lot of applications actually where we utilize tap water, drinking water, but where it's actually used for secondary use. Now, how comes that in Flanders we have achieved 102 liters of water use and even less of tap water use, even if I told you that actually there was no awareness with the population, so not with the governance neither, about water scarcity. For those of you who have been following the presentation of our Flemish minister, Zuhal Demir, and about her Blue Deal, she very much points out that in Flanders we need to change the way we look into the management of water. Why? Because in the past we have been setting up a system on preventing flooding. For Flanders, and I think that's the same for the Netherlands, the biggest risk with respect to public water management was about flooding. So to avoid flooding, what have Flanders done? They made sure that the sewage system was well built and that the rainwater was put to the sewage and let's say directed to the sea. Or let's say to reduce the load on the sewage, there has been taken initiatives to make sure that people on their private houses were harvesting the rainwater, and then I'll tell you then how this turned out into a building code, which has been, let's say, developing over the past decades into a building code that you understand primarily built for dealing with the risk of flooding. But now the code has been renewed, and the new code will be in application from October on, where you see that actually it's changed from a code for risk against flooding. Now it's built into a building code for risk against water scarcity. So the history of this regulation is already back in 2004. Actually, it was compulsory, it was mandatory to install a buffer for rainwater when you built a new house or when you rebuilt a house. The strange thing, but you have to look at everything into context. It was mandatory to build this buffer, but there were no regulations about what to do with the rainwater. So you needed to install the rainwater buffer tank, but then it was, problem was solved because the load on the sewage system was reduced. 10 years later, almost 10 years later, 2013, they said, okay, actually, it costs a lot of money, so we're not going to make it mandatory anymore. When you do renovation of the house or when you do an extension of the house, it only is mandatory when you do a new house, when you build a new house, or when you rebuild the house. And they reduced, let's say, the requirements for how big the surface area needs to be for a certain size of buffer tank. And they also said, okay, you need to buffer the rainwater, and when the buffer tank is full, then you need to infiltrate it before you bring it to the sewage system. And they said, well, there should be a minimum volume of 5,000 liters and a maximum volume of 10,000 liters. And interesting, they said there should be a minimal reuse of rainwater. So 10 years before there was no rules about using it. Now they say there should be a minimal reuse of the rainwater. And there should be a clear separation between the rainwater and the wastewater. Interesting now is that new regulation as from October 2023, so it takes about a decade, 10 years, to come to new insights. Okay, a technical issue is that, let's say they reduced the requirements for what is the minimum surface area before to invest in this. They increased the requirements for how big this buffer should be. But most important, where they last today, still there is only a minimal reuse required. Now they say, no, it should be a maximum reuse. You should maximum reuse the collected rainwater for applications and activities. And it's written like that in the regulation that do not require water of drinking quality. And they give all the examples. Actually, the tulips from just a few minutes ago, all these are listed and say, well, for this you should maximal use rainwater. That will go into force October 23, so within a few months from now. And it's also regulating the way that, okay, if you're not able to do it private, one house, well, then you can arrange it in a collective way, but you need to take care of this water. That means that we expect, this is the evolution of tap water use in Flanders. We've seen a downward trend with the stagnation. We expect that this new regulation will bring that consumption further down. As a public water company, I think we have a reputation of being a conservative sector. The good news is we are less and less. Let's put it in an optimistic way. We are less and less. That means we have also looked into, okay, what are now the opportunities? What do we see as opportunities for the future domestic water consumption? About reuse prognosis and for which type of water. And where we see today that 11% of rainwater is reused in Flanders, we think this could be growing 2070. Okay, it's a long time, you could say, but still to 55%. That's important. Impressive, and we see that, let's say, as technology will develop, like the Hydraloop, that also more sewage or grey water will be reused. And that means as a water company, we need to think further how to build, and as the previous speakers have been saying, it will be less centralized, more decentralized. It will go via a transition with hybrid systems and so on. But we see actually that collaboration will there very much be important, not only between the public water companies, but definitely also between public water companies and private technology companies. Diversity of sources is very important, what is called in our Water Europe vision multiple water. Reduce, reuse and recycle, definitely circular water. And also different ways of storage of water in innovative ways, putting it down in deep layers. But not only this, and I need to be honest with you, all these slides are not all new. So I have recycled some of the slides, but which means this is a true and honest story. That means that yes, there are challenges in, further down the road, but we see also the opportunities on digital water. We are investing in what we call Internet of Water Flanders, so where all the drinking water companies are connected, but not only on the drinking water, but also on surface waters and on the levels of the groundwaters, which should bring us in better demand forecast systems. We have all heavy programs running on reduction of the so-called non-revenue water, which we often call the leakages. And it gives new perspectives for circular water. Sensor technology development is there an important one, and the development of membranes. I think it's, when moving to it, technology is there. Technology development is progressing. As I said yesterday evening on concluding our session in a few floors below, we should not wait for each other. We should move, and we should move from the public water companies, from the governments, from the citizens, and from the technology developers. And if we go together, we will go. We will get far, for sure. Thank you. Questions?
Oh, you stay here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hans. David Smith from BNB. Hans, thank you for this presentation. It's really great to see a public water company that is so interested in decentralized treatment solutions. But that raised a question for me. As a water company, essentially you're looking to make sure that you can cover your costs for operation, for maintenance, and investing in your own future, climate resilient future. But you also want, as you was mentioning here in your presentation, the idea that water is reused, rainwater is captured, there's more decentralized treatment of this water. which will basically mean, if I understand correctly, that there's less money coming to your operation. So talk me a little bit around your economic model and how are you going to secure your economic future as a water company?
Yeah, that's we have these discussions internally very much, of course, because it is true by moving into that direction, that means that our actual and traditional business model is not sustainable. Yeah, but then we say, but let's say a business model is, let's say our mission is not to maintain our business model. Our mission is to secure water availability, water accessibility, and water affordability for this generation and the generations to come. So we need to build a water system that it can serve that mission. And then we need to adopt and adjust the business model for being able to have this properly running. That means that the role of a public water company will change. And we are changing, but let's say we should not wait until, because sometimes people say, oh, but we are going to destroy ourselves. We are not going to destroy anything. We are going to destroy our society if we're not going to take care of sustainable water management. Okay, we will need to, because the tariff schemes now in Flanders, one of the reasons why also it's not only about the rainwater harvesting, but the tariff scheme in Flanders is only a very limited amount, and a lot of our consumers don't pay any fixed fee. They just pay for the liters of water they let flow out of the tap. Now, in that business model, this is not going to work unless you increase the price of the per liter. Yeah? So then you need to think about a different tariff scheme where also a fixed part is more important, but where people also feel that is part of a sort of an insurance premium. When increasing, let's say, the awareness about the true value of water, yeah? That gives you a different acceptance for different prices. For my minister doesn't like it, but for me, water today is too cheap. And when you do, and you say, yeah, our business model is going to be under pressure. Yes, of course. But at the same time, technology companies, if they do the calculation, and if you say this is the price of water today, you will never start a business because your return on the investment is far too low, because the actual price of water is too low. You should think further ahead and understand that, yeah, the value of water is there, so the pricing should adapt. I think another thing is about pricing is that, let's say the history and tradition is that water services in Europe and Northern Americas, due to the famous Bonaparte, is a public service. I think it's very important that water is a public good. And the importance of a public service is that you're able to have a solidarity in the cost so that it is affordable for everyone. I think if you go to a hybrid system, we also need to think as a society, how are we going to make sure that let's say there is a fair and transparent contribution of the different parts of society who can build their business and their living because of the availability of water. But I told also our minister that I made a calculation myself on my rainwater tank. And because a lot of people say rainwater is for free. No, it's not for free. Because my investment in my in buffer tank, that is a cost. The investment in the filters that I need to replace, that is a cost. The pump, which is pumping it into my house, it is also a cost. So if you would compare that, actually you see that tap water is for free. So, but we should raise that awareness, and I think the vision of Water Europe, but the core is, let's talk about the value of water. It's the same with, and then I finalize.
Yeah,
no, but it's the same about leakages. If you could look into the cost of leakage of the system, companies said in the past, well, water, it doesn't pay off to invest in finding and repairing the leak. No, it doesn't if you only look into the cost of water. But if you look into the value of what it does, now I close all the
No,
questions.
thank you very much. Thank you so much. Very wise words. And just to let you know that 3 days ago, just before